At the time, I guess this was about 3 months ago or so, the Chicago Teachers Union had gone on strike in an attempt to prevent the closure of 50 schools in Chicago. You recall that Rahm Emanuel claimed that there was simply no funding for these schools. And simultaneously also financing essentially a private arena for a university to the tune of $100+ million. At the time, the Chicago Teachers Union had claimed that this is part of a privatization scheme. And it now seems that those charges have been borne out. Just 2.5 months after a historic vote to close 50 schools, Chicago is laying the groundwork to bring more charter schools to the city. Look, there is no evidence that charter schools in the aggregate perform better than public schools. In fact, there's plenty of evidence that says that in many cases they perform worse. In New York City, we have seen a new round of test results that have come out that have showed that charter schools perform no better than the public schools. What we do know is that charter schools engage in what is called creaming. They get the best of students. They, in many instances, are able to weed out problem students in a way that public schools are not. They already are, their pool of students is already self-selecting in some respects because many of them accept kids through lotteries, which means that parents have to make an affirmative act to get into a lottery and get their kids into the school. And it is the involvement of parents which is often a huge determinant as to whether or not a kid's going to be successful in school. You have charter schools draining resources from public schools. I'm not against all charter schools. Charter schools are a good idea to the extent that they develop, that they are experimental, that they develop things that could be scalable across the board. There's been not a lot of that as far as I'm concerned. What is happening now is that a means is now becoming an ends. And part of that ends is simply to destroy teachers' unions. And I can tell you that charter schools also benefit greatly from the fact that you have for-profit entities running these schools often, people getting big salaries, and also they have, to a large extent, it is just proven to be, in many cases, a way of just soaking the taxpayer of money and providing some type of outlets for gala benefits. Of the things that Bill de Blasio is proposing, the idea of universal pre-K, I think, is huge. Because, you know, what I have come to understand about the sort of relentless, in New York City, the schools are, it's not like living in a community where there's one school. Your kid goes to the school. Hopefully it's good. If it's not, then you work to make it better. In New York, it's constant seeking out of schools, and particularly once you get to middle school, and that process starts when the kid's like 3. And one of the things that's quite clear is that, A, schools that are better, it's not even necessarily a function of what the school is doing, it's a function of who their students are. The more students you have in any given class that have problems learning because of either learning challenges that they have, because of behavioral challenges that they have, or because they come from families that are poor, families that have less resources to spend on getting the kids up to speed, sending them to pre-K. They don't have the resources to send them to pre-K, where kids learn to socialize better, and they learn the basic fundamental things about just simply being in a classroom that don't in any way, by the time they get to kindergarten and first grade, stand in the way from other kids learning. They also, at that time, begin to identify that if the kids have any type of problems that need to be addressed. I've stated it many times on this program, but a low-income child enters in with a 20,000 word listening vocabulary deficit versus well-to-do kids. And that is simply because they haven't had the experiences that kids of wealth do, or even upper middle class. Their parents don't have the time to spend with them because they maybe are working multiple jobs. Both parents are working, and both parents are working multiple jobs. The parents themselves may have a smaller or lower amount of education. So these kids come in with a deficit already. And the idea of charter schools is becoming clearer and clearer that it is a racket. There are some schools that are good, no doubt about it. There are some charter schools that are excellent, just like there are some public schools that are excellent. There are some charter schools that are really bad, just like public schools that are really bad. In aggregate, there's not much difference, and to the extent there's any evidence, public schools do better. And if charter schools replace public schools, I can assure you, you're going to have the same problems that you see in public schools. The difference will be that part of the money is skimmed off for these privatized notions. Less money will go to teachers. And eventually you will have all the problems that you have with public schools in the aggregate, but they'll be worse. This is not even to talk about the problem of high-stakes testing. So this is just basically an end route. I mean, yes, we're privatizing the commons to some degree, but it's part of a larger push to simply privatize and put money in pockets of people who aren't necessarily any more interested or qualified to educate our kids than anybody else. So the Chicago public school system closed 50 schools. And the district then posted an official request for proposals that invites charter schools to apply to open shop in what the school district has identified as priority neighborhoods. These are the same areas where the schools were closed. Chicago's teachers union and others have argued for years that school closures are about making way for charters and weakening the union. Union President Karen Lewis says, "We're not surprised at all by this. We were called conspiracy theorists, and then here is absolute proof of what the intentions are. The district has clearly made a decision that they want to push privatization on our public schools. Teachers at charters cannot be represented by the Chicago Teachers Union." Period. End of story. That's all you need to know.